here. So our main topic today, we're going to learn about, is it fake or real news? And that's really an issue today, especially with politics. But even if this wasn't the political cycle, every day we're dealing with news bombarded with stuff. And unfortunately, a large part of it isn't really true. So the more you can figure some of these things out, the better we're all going to be. First, a little bio about myself. I'm known as the PC guy. I'm the son of John Kreuzer here at Carondelet. I retired after working for 40 years at 3M in their information technology area. While I was there, and actually while I'm retired, I'm still very active with the 3M Personal Computing Club. Most of the presentations I do here, I also give these presentations to the 3M Computing Club. So I've been very involved with that. At its peak, the 3M Computing Club had 1,200 members. I mentioned I'm thrifty, not cheap. I usually look with computers, whether it's software or hardware. You can spend a lot of money or you can spend a little bit of money. And I usually tend towards the thriftier side there. I was just talking there about free tech help. I do offer free tech help, so I'm on the list of people. Usually I do the first and the third Monday of every month now from 1 to 3 p.m. You can sign up at the front desk for a half-an-hour time slot. Now this next Monday, I'd normally be doing support, but because that's Labor Day, I won't be doing it. So the next slot would be September 16th from 1 to 3. Okay, I usually give these talks once a month on different subjects. The next subject for September is going to be identity theft in the dark web. We've talked before about this, but it's worth revisiting again. And if you haven't heard, there's a huge data breach that just happened in the United States, 3 billion records, and so almost every one of you, your social security number has been exposed, along with your telephone numbers, along with your addresses, all kinds of information has been exposed. So it's worthwhile going into some of these things again, things that you can do to protect yourself. And that. Along with myself and my dad and my sister and brother-in-law, we put on the Fix-It Clinic here at 3M. That we usually do every other month because people thankfully aren't breaking things every month that we have to do it, but we do it every other month. The next Fix-It Clinic is Monday, September 9th. So if you've got anything, small appliance, lamps, electronics, furniture, something, a rosary, jewelry, anything that needs fixing, we'll take a look and try and fix it there. I mentioned that I record these presentations and I put them out on the Carondelet website. So if you haven't been out there, you can go out there at any time to the Carondelet website, and there's an entry called Tech Help. And that Tech Help, you can get a list of past meetings that we've had, and you can view the videos and get the handouts. Okay, let's get to our main topic, which is it fake or real news? And this is a graphic I took and used on the posters, and we'll be talking about all these things, but this isn't the sole thing we'll be talking about there. So let's get to the topic here. This is a quote I loved. The problem with quotes found on the internet is that they are often not true, and it's attributed to Abraham Lincoln. Well, boy, was he 150 years before the internet was discovered, he was making quotes about that. But that's kind of the problem we have today is just because you see it in print and just because it's got Abraham Lincoln's picture on there doesn't mean that Abraham Lincoln quoted this. And So I got a kick out of this deal. Fake news has been around forever, before the internet, before computers, personal computers, before phones. But the internet and artificial intelligence is helping spread and amplify these fakes because it's so easy to do. In the past, if you had a fake article or something, you maybe had to get it published in a newspaper. Well, newspapers had whole processes that you'd go through and fact checkers and things like that. Nowadays, you don't have to put it in a newspaper. You can share it on a social feed. You can publish it. You can email it to somebody. You can text it to somebody. There's a million ways that you can share information out there. It doesn't cost you a penny. And also, there's no filter on what's true and what's not true. So that's unfortunately the state that we currently live in. We all need to fight back against groups that are on the fringes or trolls who like to stir up trouble and disseminate some of this fake information. This problem isn't just domestic, it's also foreign, and it's not just text that we see. There's readily available online tools to let anyone with a modest level of skills create bogus news websites, create articles, clone voices, manipulate photos, and fabricate videos that seem real. This is an example here. This is a friend of mine, actually is in the 3M Personal Computing Club that I've known at 3M for 50 years. Just a little over a couple of weeks ago, he went up to Canada fishing, and he sent this picture of him catching a large pike there, large pike fish. And I thought I'd kind of make fun of him a little bit because this is a real picture. He did catch his fish, and he caught several other fish that he also had pictures of. But I took this picture in about 30 seconds. I uploaded the picture to a website. I identified the area where the fish was, and I told it to generate a weed, to put a weed in there instead of the fish. And this is what it came up with. And so he had sent this out to a group of his friends, and I said, "Oh, I can tell that his picture with the fish was a fake one that he had faked." I said, "I uncovered the real photograph of you catching a weed, a large weed," and I sent that out, and everybody got a good kick. But it's unbelievable the quality that you get. I mean, you can't tell. You know, it melds the stuff together, but it's so easy to manipulate that into a fake that unfortunately in the news and everywhere else you see all of these things taking place because it is so easy to do. Okay, next we'll talk about a fact-checking checklist, and this is what on the first page of the handout, those check boxes there. You can use these questions to assess the likelihood that something that you're looking at or viewing, whether it's a video or text or that, if it's really true or if it's a fake. Just because one thing is wrong on it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a fake, but obviously the more red flags or the more check boxes it has, you should be more skeptical that this may not be true. So the first one, does it cause a strong emotional reaction? Are you angry? Are you intensely hoping that the news turns out to be true or false? If any of these things are true, flag it if you respond yes to any of those. Because that's what fakers and people trying to put out false information are trying to do, is they're trying to elicit reactions. They're trying to get you to click on things, and we'll talk a lot more about this. Was it promoted on a website? Did it show up in your social media feed? Was it sent to you by somebody you know? Again, if it's any of these, flag it if you respond yes to that, because that's the way fake information is frequently disseminated. The lie goes around the world, and 10 seconds, and the truth just crawls at a snail's pace. Does it use excessive punctuation or all caps for emphasis? Again, flag if you respond yes to that. So you'll see headlines that are all caps. You'll see underlines and bold and big text and things like that. Well, they're trying to draw your attention. Now, are they trying to draw your attention because this is good news that they're trying to get out to the whole population? No, they're trying to get you to click and to buy something in an ad, or to click on this, or to go to there. So you do have to be very careful about all this. Does it make a claim about containing a secret or telling you something that the media doesn't want you to know? That's a real big red flag. If they're saying, well, it's not being reported anywhere else, we've got the scoop on it. Well, that doesn't happen in today's world. So if they're the only news source that has it, be very, very, very skeptical that it's true. Is the news designed for easily sharing, like a meme? Again, a lot of this fake stuff is put out there so that people share it on Facebook, or send it in a text message, or send it in an email. And so if it was specifically created for people to share, that's a red flag that there's ulterior motives that somebody is using, and it's not to get the truth out. Is it a well-known news source? Well, this one, flag if you say no. If it's coming from a newspaper that you've never heard of, or a website that you've never heard of, chances are it's false. But people tend to believe it was written on the screen. It was there's a picture with it, so it's got to be true. No, it's you want it from a well-known, and we'll talk about how you can check out some of these things a little bit later. Is there a byline, which is an author's name attached to the piece? If the piece of news does not attribute an author, that's a huge red flag, because believe you me, if somebody's got a breaking story and they uncovered something, they uncovered the Watergate, you want your name associated with it. Now, if you're trying to fool people, you don't want your name associated with it. So if you see supposed news that doesn't have an author, that's a huge red flag. If you're going out to a website or reading stuff on a website, check the website's About section. Does the site describe itself as fantasy news or satirical news site? So there are a number of sites out there that will create fake photos or videos and Saturday Night Live type things. Well, that's obviously meant to be a joke or meant to be a fake there. But people will take stuff off of some of those sites and then claim that it's true when it never was true. The person just wanted to see how many people they could fool. Does the person or organization that produced the news have any editorial standards? Flag if no. So certainly the better news sources do have standards, do have maybe fact checkers in their employment that look things up and things like that. But there's getting to be less and less of that done with all the news that we have out there. Does the Contact Us section, and this is especially true of a website or that, does it include an email address that matches the domain name? So if you go out to the AP or Reuters or stuff like that, does the Contact Us take you to the Reuters or the AP News email to send? if it's going to an email that's a Gmail or a Yahoo email address, good authors don't use Gmail or Yahoo Mail as their email address. They're employed by competent companies and they have that as their email address. Does a quick search of the name of the website raise any suspicion? So we all have access to Google. You can quickly look up some of these things. So if it supposedly came from a local hometown newspaper and you Google that local hometown newspaper and, gee, there is no such newspaper as that in this town, or stuff like that, you can easily check some of those things. Does the example that you're evaluating have a current date on it? So almost all the fakes have no dates whatsoever. Good news always has a date because news is always facts and information from a specific time and date. And it's important for everybody to understand what specific time and date that news supposedly came from. Because if it is a week old or a month old or a year old, that's completely different than if it supposedly happened an hour ago. And you want to know that. And the fakes don't have dates or usually dates or times in there. Does the example cite a variety of sources, including official and expert sources? Does the news this example provides appear in reports from other news outlets? Again, flag if no, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, how easy it is to check some of these things. Does the example hyperlink to other quality sources? Usually a good news article will link to other sources. If it's talking about climate change or it's talking about this, it'll cite or reference other articles, other pages. It's similar when you were in high school or college and you were writing a term paper. You wouldn't just spew out facts. You had to support those facts, and you had to support those facts and that information by footnoting and saying, this is where I got this source, this is where I got this. And good factual information still will have that in there. Okay, now we'll talk about some tools to actually make it easy to do some of these things that we talked about. First thing is what's called the reverse image search to confirm that the image is authentic, not altered or taken from another context. And these are three of the sites that are the highly recommended by myself and other people. The first one is Google, images.google.com. The next one is TinEye, and the next one is Yandex. And let's just take a quick look here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up an article here, if this works. So this is an article that was out there, and it's by the well-known site called Sportkedia. I don't know that site. Doesn't sound real reputable. But here's a picture of LeBron James, if you're not familiar who this person is. He's plays for the Lakers basketball. And last year, there were a number of pictures floating around the internet of him all in pink and carrying a pink purse and that in support of the Barbie movie. So Barbie was real big last year, and so the common question was, it certainly looks real. That's his face there, and he's all in pink there. It's got to be true, right? Well, with this reverse image search, what I can do, and I'm currently in the Chrome browser. Different browsers work a little bit different, but one of the things I can do is I can right mouse click on any image from any site, anywhere. I can be in Facebook, I can be anywhere. I can right mouse click on here, and you'll see there's an option in here that says search in Google Lens. And this search in Google Lens, Search, yeah, so this is like doing a Google search, and it goes through the internet and tells me all the places that this particular picture has showed up and appeared in. And so you can start seeing, well, are there any reputable newspapers in here? Where did it show up? And if it's just showing up in Twitter posting or Facebook postings or things like that, that's a big, huge red flag. Now, by default, when I right mouse clicked on it, you'll see it kind of put some edges around here, and it was looking for both these images together. If I just want to see him in pink there, I can easily shrink this down and just do that image. It'll just search for that image, and it'll tell me what articles, who posted it, when it was done. So I can. That's the power of this reverse image searching that I can do from anywhere at any time, and so you can see in a lot of these cases, here's the picture there. It was on X or Twitter there. Here's another Twitter. Here's TikTok. It was out on TikTok. There he is on Instagram. So you can see where these things showed up and things like that. And you can actually, we won't go into it because I don't have time to do everything, but you can go up and you can say, try and find the source of that picture, the first place that that picture ever showed up on the internet. And it'll try and trace it back for you based on the date. Obviously the oldest website or the oldest posting that had that photo is where it probably originated from. And so with just a couple of clicks, I can easily check out information. You also run into things like this on a photo that, let's say it's a picture of I think what was one of the fake deals where college students supposedly protesting for Palestine. Well, it turned out that the picture was college students that were celebrating for Beyonce putting on a concert at their university, and somebody that took the photo, because it doesn't cost you anything to take these photos, put an article out there and stuff like that. And that's an example of, again, fake news, doing an image search. All of a sudden you can see, well, gee, it wasn't even Palestine, it wasn't this. And in some cases, I've even seen it where the people will have a protest sign or a t-shirt, and it's easy to manipulate that. You may have heard of Donald Trump had Taylor Swift was supporting him, and she had t-shirts on and she had signs on. Well, she's never worn a shirt, she's never had signs, but it's easy to manipulate these photos and put the stuff in there, and then people believe it. Well, it's a picture, it's got to be true. No, it's somebody who just had too much time on their hand or wanted to cause a little controversy there. So you can do these reverse image searches. It's kind of fun to see where stuff originated or where else it's being published or things like that. This is an example here. So this is the image that was published, was Venice. This is Venice, and the canal in Venice is frozen over. Well, it's never been frozen over. It was a combination of this picture of Venice and a gondola there, and a picture from, I don't know, Antarctica or something with ice, and just manipulated the two and put it there. Well, guess what? A lot of people thought it was true. I don't want to go to Venice, at least not during the winter time, unless you want to skate on the canals. But that's how easy it is to do. Okay, another thing that you can do is you can search fact-checking sites to see if it's labeled as less than true. So there are a number of sites on the internet that will do some investigation and report whether they think it's true or not. One of the oldest is what's the snoops.com there. Another is factcheck.org, politifact.com, AP News has a complete section. Rumor Guard is another popular one, Washington Post, and there's others that also do more fact checking and checking into things. And let's just take a look at from Rumor Guard, and this is Rumor Guard in regard to the image that we were talking about before there. So the Barbie image, and they also had Barack Obama, and there's Joe Biden in pink there. And so Rumor Guard will go through and check things out. And then the nice thing about Rumor Guard is it'll tell you what it found. And so this was an evaluation done July 26th of last year. And it's saying realistic images of the various people, but they're all fake images. And then it'll tell you a quick look. Well, they did not wear pink outfits. Then it'll say if it thinks it's an AI-generated image or not. It'll say that. And it'll tell you the analysis that they did to get there. Then they'll tell you about the factors that they use to determine whether it might be true or might be false. And so this can kind of give you a little bit of the background of how you can check your own news and check things also if they aren't out on some of these sites. This is the way that you can check. Well, is it authentic? No, these aren't, and these look like this. And the snapshot, they did authentication, evidence, and source. And so it just goes through and tells you the way that they did various things. So it's any of these sites will help you determine if something is true or false there. Okay, let's look at some other tips to keep you safe and trying to determine this stuff. The first thing is to slow down. Give yourself time to process what you read, see, or hear. Don't immediately react to a headline or a title or something that somebody sent you in an email or on Facebook or something supporting their political view or whatever there. Just slow down a little bit and take the stuff in. When you take the stuff in, you want to be very conscious of the context of the information. False context is most common using real or fake images with fake news. Because people always believe, well, if there's a picture, it's got to be true, and if it supports the text that's out there, well, then that's two positives there. It's really got to be true information. Well, no, I can manipulate a photo, and I can write anything that I want, and so you do have to be very skeptical. Fakers might alter an image that was captured or change the context entirely, like on a sign or a shirt especially, because that's easy to do on a shirt or a sign. I'll just change the text. Now they'll think a person supports this when the person might be totally against it. Or, gee, this was something, a shirt or a protest back in the 1960s, and here they were talking about climate change back then. Well, no, they weren't talking about climate change back then. Somebody's playing with you. They're manipulating you. So it's a case there. It's usually done, so almost all this fake news that we see is done to get views. They either want you to watch their video, or even if it's the nightly news on TV, the nightly news on TV does not want to give you unbiased news and show you both sides of the story. It unfortunately, it wants you to tune in, and they're targeting a certain audience with a certain bias, and they're going to have their news biased towards that side, right or wrong. And because that's how they get viewers, That's how they get viewers to stay or tune in tomorrow. That's the way they get clicks on their website. And some people just create these fakes just to try and fool people. When I was younger, I was more of a hacker also. And on Facebook and things like that, it was just fun to create all kinds of fake things to see how many people would share it and how far around the world it could go. And again, you can put out the wildest thing, aliens land in New Jersey, and oh yes, that's true, and people are sharing it and liking it, and it's just a game. It's just kind of fun to do. I wasn't monetarily making any money, but it was just kind of fun to see how many people would fall for something like that. We all have a confirmation bias, where our natural tendency is to accept news, even fake news, that reinforces our existing beliefs. This is especially true in politics. A lot of things, people want to say it's black or it's white, but a lot of news and a lot of stuff falls somewhere in between. But most of the news sources, you're going to see one side way to the left and one side way to the right, and they aren't talking about, well, it's probably somewhere in between there, because that doesn't sell newspapers, that doesn't get people watching the news, that doesn't get people clicking, that doesn't get people sharing it with other people. The more sensational stuff is what sells. Reasoning. We all have reasoning. We're human beings. We have the capability of reasoning. Fake news is often disguised to exploit your cognitive biases and vulnerabilities to logical fallacies. What that basically means is most fakes don't pass the smell test. There's something rotten there. It's not quite right. Something just doesn't seem right in the picture or in the title or the headline. They exploit the news gap or the time with us hungry for the news. So they'll put something out and say, breaking news, breaking news. Well, when isn't it breaking news? News is news, but they think they can gather you in or capture you to something if they say that it's breaking and that. If the message seems off, it probably is false. Does it really make sense to you? Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, aliens, all those things. Another thing to look at is what's the evidence or lack thereof. Many fake claims lack any pretense of evidence, while others present digital fakes or out of context elements for support. Evaluating the evidence for a claim is a key fact-checking skill. The source, we talked about doing that search and stuff like that. Not all sources are created equal, but it's easy to glaze over significant differences while scrolling through social media feeds, text, or links. Consider the source. Is it satire like the National Enquirer or trusted like the AP, Getty Images, Reuters? Search for multiple sources, particularly if the subject seems extreme. Do what's called lateral reading, which is who else is reporting on it. So if you're not familiar, you're all familiar with Google searches, but you can also go to news.google.com and you can search for all the news sources, who's reporting and what are they reporting on. So you can see if this supposed breaking news is being reported on by some of the better sites there. If another source is reporting on it, they may have more context. If your search doesn't turn up other stories on the same topic, that's a huge red flag. Never trust a screenshot of a news article because that can easily be manipulated. It should be a link to the full article. And then also who shared it or where did it come from. Get news from mainstream media outlets, however imperfect they may be. This is a list of the top 10 unbiased news sources. Again, whoever creates the list has a bias, but the AP is considered #1, and you have in here NPR and the BBC News and Getty, and so different news sources there. This is something that you really have to watch out for, pink slime. It's called pink slime websites that masquerade as news outlet sites. Their undisclosed funding is coming from possibly a political operatives on the left or on the right. In February, NewsGuard, an organization founded by media entrepreneur and journalist Steve Brill that rates the trustworthiness of news sites, launched a 2024 election misinformation tracking center. It found almost 1,000 websites worldwide that repeatedly published false claims about the election. It identified 793 social media accounts associated with these sites who kept posting and posting and posting. As of March 2024, 1,178 partisan sites were masquerading as local news outlets with such names as the Philadelphia Leader or the Copper Courier. There is no paper by that name, but people all of a sudden give credence to this because, oh, the Philadelphia Leader, it sounds like a nice little hometown newspaper that really did their job. No, the articles are written by people who are trying to support their own candidate or smear the other one. Okay, some more. There's no magic flag or field to identify AI-generated images. Just like I was able to put that weed in there, there's no flag in that photo that says this is AI-generated. In the old days, it was harder to do, took more time. For AI, you might have seen 6 fingers on a hand or 3 arms or things like that. Now the packages have gotten so much better, so much easier to do that it's really hard to do. OpenAI recently began testing a new text-to-video AI model called Sora, which can generate a slick 1-minute Hollywood-style video from a text prompt. So all I have to do is type in aliens visit the earth, and it'll generate a 1-minute video showing that aliens are invading the earth there. Doesn't mean that they are, but again, it didn't take me a lot of time or a lot of effort. OpenAI also recently demonstrated an AI tool called Voice Engine that can generate, based on text input, of a 15-second audio sample of, let's say, my voice, to imitate my voice. And so just because you think it's person A talking, it's not. It's computer generated, and there's no way to tell that it's not computer generated there. So you have to be very skeptical of these things. Motive voices that closer resemble a particular speaker. How do you know a movie like Independence Day, where the aliens attack the White House, is a movie and not news of an alien invasion? Well, that's up to us. That's why we've got a brain. That's why we have to think. This is where your own knowledge of how the world works is going to be to your benefit. If something seems too scandalous, too outrageous, or too novel, then seek out other sources and do a little bit of your own fact-finding to find a reputable news organization that's reporting on it. This is another thing that we see now today is not only is it fake news, but we also are bombarded by what's flagged as fake may be true. Maybe it's actually true news, but a politician or somebody doesn't want to be associated with it, so they say that this is a deep fake. I didn't make that video. I didn't say that thing. It's a quote or text or things like that. So you have to be careful of the opposite there, where the person or that is trying to say, it's not me, forget what you actually saw. I never did that. Well, in some cases, they actually did that. People will start using AI chatbots, where you can ask it any question, whether you're on a system like Alexa or in the chat bots, you can ask questions. Well, all of these models perform poorly around election news because these models are fed information from what's called a large language model, where you gather information. That information frequently is from websites that are a year or more old. Well, if you're looking for current information, it's not going to be loaded in these databases. So any of the information that it has is older information. Now, if you're looking for historical references, that's good. But if you're looking for current references, these AI models and capabilities are not good. In fact, they found that half of the responses were inaccurate. More than a third of the responses were considered harmful or incomplete. More than 1 in 10 was deemed biased, because depending on what data you loaded, you can make the chatbot more biased one way or the other. Answers are often hallucinations or falsehoods, meaning they sounded correct or authoritative, but were fabricated. This is an important point that I give to people. Social media shouldn't be your source for news. Even though Meta's policy on Facebook and Instagram, advertisers to make sure that they disclose if they've altered the images or they've done things like that, they really do a very poor job of it. And they really can't monitor everything that's going on there. So there's unfortunately a lot of crap out in social media there. The science is unequivocal here. Social media is bad for your mental and physical health, let alone your IQ. If you are on social media, don't use them as your news source. They are a place for entertainment and for connecting to your friends. They should not be your news source. They are not meant to be a news source. And you won't get accurate news on any of these platforms, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any of the sites like that. This is another one. Think before sharing. Social media makes it very easy for us to react and emotionally to post and unwittingly share information. Before sharing content, stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and consider your emotions and biases. When we share content without first verifying its accuracy, we all become misinformation agents. So we're part of the problem instead of solving the problem. And I see too many people that do that. And again, use these tips. Escape your bubble. Whatever your beliefs, we share something in common. We all have confirmation bias. We seek news and accept information because it affirms what we already think. Get a 360-degree understanding of a topic to challenge your beliefs rather than reinforce them. If you watch Fox News, try watching CNN during the day or vice versa. Also, what are the other sides of the story that you're not hearing? Most issues are not black and white, they're somewhere in between. I have a good friend of mine who is a high school debater, and I like to think of myself also as a debater. So whenever I hear anything on a particular issue or potential political or things like that, I kind of say, okay, if I had to argue on one side, what would the facts be? If I had to argue on the other side, what would the facts be? And that's where usually you've got misinformation and you've got information that's being presented that's not on one side or the other side. It usually falls somewhere in between there. So be a good debater and think, why would somebody put out this information? What do they have to gain? What are they trying to do? And when you look at some of those things, you'll be able to tell better. Breaking news is always full of incomplete news. It can take up to 72 hours for a complete picture to be reported on. So anything that claims to be breaking, you always have to be very skeptical of it, even from the trusted news sources, because they have limited pieces of information. And until they get more of the story, interview more people, do some more research, then the true story usually starts coming out. News organizations have less fact checkers today on their staff. That's just the way things are, unfortunately. And then everybody needs to be a doubting Thomas. So I'm Thomas. I'll invite everybody to be a doubting. Whenever you see a piece of news and that, be a doubting Thomas there. Okay, that I went through that pretty quick there. Questions or comments? Lots of stuff out there, but you do have tools to help you. That reverse image search, the checking for the validity of the articles, what other sites and that are reporting on it. Using all that stuff together will give you a good idea of what might be true and what is fake information there. Sure, go ahead.
This shows how very ignorant I am. I guess I'm not ashamed of it, I just admit it. When you say social media, I hardly know what you mean. I have a computer, I turn it on. Usually I go to the mail or, something I'm interested in. But lots of times, it's just a bunch of stuff. It's advertising underpants, it's advertising shoes, telling you that Trump somebody else is bad. Somebody else is
Yeah, when I talk about social media, it's really any of the sites, Facebook and Instagram, Twitter.
I don't even know. I don't have the name of it.
Even doing a Google search. Let's say all you do on the internet is you go out and do a Google search. Google keeps track of information about you. So every time you do a search, it has that information. It, judging by the things that you search for and what you do, it knows whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. It knows that it's going to feed you news articles that confirm your bias.
Okay, so I want to get on Google. How do I get on Google? What do I get to make Google show?
Well, so yeah, let me go out here. So I'm over here and I'm going to go in here and let's say, what should we search for? Is there anything that you're looking for or want to? What's that?
The fair is how many people show up. That's on the screen right now.
Yeah, what you see is you'll see results coming back from the search. These results coming back from the search, the results that I see are different than the results you see. The bias is taking prior information that Google has collected about you and putting stuff in there. So such that some of these, in this case, this isn't an ad, but let's do this. Let's say I was looking for Trump news. Let's just search for that. So the news that comes back here is different for me than it is for you. Google has an algorithm that it chooses what to put up front, what to show you, and it knows that you clicked on certain articles in the past, and that influences what you're going to see in the future. So you have that. Well, let's go through here. The other thing that you have is a number of these sites are paid advertisements. So a company is paid money so that their search results show up higher up in the list. And it paid Google money because it's trying to get people to click on their site and go out to their news or their different deal there. So that's kind of the, you have to be skeptical of what you're presented with and what you click on. Now, if you use a Facebook or anything like that, that's even more, they have more information on what you've done, how long you've hovered, have you clicked, what things you've clicked on, and all of that influences any other news or any other advertisements or anything that you see.
That's crazy, my question. I don't know how to get to Google in the first place. Where do you see GOOGLE imprint on your screen so that you can use it?
Oh, where do you get it? So you have a couple of different things there. Usually people have set up to immediately get there, but I can go up to the top of the screen here, which is the URL up here. I can type my search up there. That's going to use whatever my default search engine is, and for 99% of the people, that's Google. So if I type in, what is the temp? That did a Google search. I didn't go out to the Google website, but there's numerous ways that you can do Google searches. If right in here, this is the address bar. Yeah, a couple of things. Within the settings of the browser that you have, there's hundreds of settings for that browser. That identifies what search you're going to use whenever you search within that browser by default. So if you have an Apple iPhone and you go into Safari and you start searching, you're using a Google search. Google pays Apple $26 billion a year. $26 billion a year Apple gets in revenue from Google just because they made Google search the default in the Safari browser. So we're talking big dollars. Google is able to pay $26 billion because it's making money from all the advertisers and the people who pay to have their results shown. So it's a tangled web that all this stuff weaves when you talk about searches and what shows up and things like that. But all of this information, like I say, when I go up here and do a search, I'm going to get different results than you because you have done different things on the internet than what I've done. And the internet as a whole environment, its sole purpose is to keep you on there as long as possible. Because the longer you're on there, the more things you're going to buy, the more stuff you're going to do. And so it's all biased towards past things that you've done, purchases that you've made, political things that you've done. Do you have a Gmail account? Gmail or Microsoft Mail, all of them read everything in your email. So they know all of the emails that you get and what the content of those are. And that influences the searches, it influences all these other things to give you things. Yes, Marla?
I'm afraid to ask this. If I put in the New York Times 2024 election, will I get information from the New York Times that is different than another person?
Yes. Yes, because it's going to know the New York Times. It may be referencing other sites that reference the New York Times. It knows that you tend to be a Democrat as opposed to a Republican. So I'm going to skew my information for one side or the other side. And so that's the world that we unfortunately live in.
The result of this is that the world has to be getting more and more bifurcated.
Well, just as we talked about that confirmation bias, the human nature is we all want our beliefs to be the right beliefs. So whenever we see something or click on it or view it, we're looking for confirmation that we're correct. The other people are wrong and incorrect. And unfortunately, the news could care less about you getting the right thing. They just want you to click and go out to their site. And while you're out on their site, there's going to be ads popping up. And a small percentage of people click on those ads and buy something. All newspapers. Well, again, there's whether it's a New York, you didn't see the New York Times in the list of the top 20 that was credible sources. And that's an indicator there that...
If you read it this morning, you don't buy.
Yes. I don't list the top 20 there. In the slide I had, I showed, that was from a news site, and even there, that's the bias of the person who did their top 20 or top 10 list here of unbiased news sources. I didn't put it on the handout because I wouldn't believe any site that did that, because in order to do any kind of a poll, there's some bias behind it. Unless you said, show me the top 10 people working on an assembly line, how many widgets a day they can produce. So something that is a definitive number that somebody can't manipulate, that's the only thing that I trust. When you start saying, well, which ones are the unbiased? Well, who determines unbiased? This I just did a search. I did a Google search and came up with this, and this is some of the sources that you'll see listed around. The AP News usually has more reporters, usually has more fact checkers than some of the others. Doesn't mean that you can't get fake information from them, because they're like everybody else. They're looking to be the first to report a story, so they may not do their due diligence, but if there is a problem, they'll usually come out with a retraction. Well, how many people see the retraction? Hardly anyone does. They remember the sensational story that maybe started it there. Yes, Mark.
But if Trump put the same question in, he would get boxed.
Possibly there, and because it's truly a case of Google and Facebook, Meta owns Facebook and Instagram, and Twitter itself all have what's called algorithms, and this is software that collects information about you. So they know when they put a news article up, did you click on it? Did you not click on it? Did you stay on that article for 5 seconds or 10 seconds? And this other article, you just didn't even read it at all. They know that, and they'll pattern all the news and all the pop-ups that you see to get you to stay on there and get you to reinforce what you're already looking at. So that's where the biased information comes from. You indirectly are creating your own bias by the things that you look at and by what you do. If you want to truly be unbiased, you have to make an attempt to be unbiased, to go out to some of these other sources, let's say you go, I have a friend of mine who's a Republican, and I tell him, I say, not that I'm a fan of Almanac on Channel 2. They go into a lot of politics, mainly Democratic bent, but if you aren't hearing the other side of the story and the other thing, how do you know what's true, what isn't true, and things like that? And again, if all you're listening to is one side or the other side, you're missing out on everything in between there, and the truth is not here and the truth is not here. The truth is usually somewhere in the middle there.
You need to listen to Fox and
What was that?
also you should pay attention to the Fox news and then pay attention to the CBS.
Yes, and the more sources that you have, the more things that you check out, you're going to be a little more unbiased there on that. But, you know, is there a definitive, is there one spot that you can go to get all accurate news? No. But we're bombarded with this news from all these other sources and all these other sites, and we just have to, as citizens of the earth here, we all have to be very skeptical of what we see and do a little research. And you do have the tools on the internet to be able to figure some of this stuff out. So it isn't impossible, but just, you know, just use some of the tips and the flags in here to say, oh, gee, you know, maybe this isn't true. Maybe I should look to see what else is out there. Maybe I should look to see what was the date of this, what was the source of this information. And it's you know, if you followed the politics and you followed the controversy with Walz and his claims, well, again, you know, Walz is saying one thing and the Republicans are saying something else. The truth really is somewhere in between here, because how do you tell a politician is lying? Well, their mouth is moving. Every time their mouth moves, they're going to say whatever makes them look good, and that's on both sides. So we, as evaluating this stuff, have to figure out really what is the truth. And let's just take one small thing there. What was Walz's position in the National Guard? Well, he had one position just before he retired, and then it was demoted after he retired. So which side is correct there? Well, they're both correct. It just depends on when you say what position did he have. So knowing that information is better than saying, well, the other side is telling a falsehood or is wrong. Well, on this side, I'd say, you know, they're both false. It's the combination of the two. If you are going to say this is the position he had, then you're going to have to say this is at the time that we're doing it. So and unfortunately that's kind of the state we're in now, as each side just tries the sensationalism on the other side.
I think you're right. The debate should be required.
Yeah, the more investigation, the more searches that you do, you'll usually find that it's not one way or the other way, it's somewhere in between there. And so, you know, especially if it's a brand new story, they're just trying to out-sensationalize somebody else. Okay, we've gone over a little bit. We'll close the meeting, but if you have any questions, you can come up, and I'll be saving this. And next time we'll talk about identity theft. So thanks for coming.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.